Good morning, class. Welcome to my sixth lecture. Today we will have a quick review of paragraph 1 to paragraph 4. So, first of all, let us come to the review of paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. So, what did we see in the first and the second paragraph? In the first paragraph, we had a description of the grandmother provided by the author himself. Through his own eyes, the author tries to draw a character sketch of his grandmother, how his grandmother was and what kind of a person she was. In the beginning, we get an idea of her physical appearance, and we can understand that she was not a very beautiful woman. Rather, she was a very, very old woman, terribly old, who cannot grow older. She had a face which was full of wrinkles and folds. It was pale and puckered. She was short and fat and had a bent back. She had a stooped back and had to walk with a support on her waist. She used to hobble about. That means she could not walk easily. She had to walk with difficulty. Her hair was silvery white and it scattered untidily on her pale forehead. Her lips would be constantly busy, not in talking or not in gossiping, rather busy chanting the prayers of God. And her fingers, that would be constantly busy counting on the beads of her rosary. A very peaceful assemblage of persona. As you can see in the next slide, a very peaceful, quiet, silent woman who was a pious soul, a compassionate person. Okay, so though she was not externally beautiful, there was something which was very, attractive, very pulling, very gravitational. Okay, now what is this that is so very, distinct about her? It is her nature. In the same paragraph, in the first paragraph again, we find a description of the author's grandfather also. How? Through the portrait that was hung on the walls of the drawing room. The author mentions, or rather he remembers, how he used to see or look at the portrait of the grandfather hung above the mantelpiece. He remembers his grandfather as an old man who was nearing his 100 years. He had a big turban on his head and he wore very loose, traditional, Punjabi outfit. His beard was very long and white and it covered the best part of his chest. Now, from this appearance, one could be very sure that this man was a grandfather and had lots and lots of grandchildren. He could not be someone's husband or somebody's father, right? So from this we can understand one thing, that ever since Khushwant Singh was born, he had never come across his grandfather. He had only seen his grandfather in a portrait, a large portrait that was hung on the walls of the drawing room, right? So his grandmother was a widow from the day he knew her, and a very, very old lady. So this is something like the portrait of the grandfather. A very old man with folds and wrinkles, having a long beard, wearing loose fitting clothes and a big turban. Right? What are the most remarkable observations in the first two paragraphs, especially in the second paragraph? These two lines. Number one, she could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. Now, what is the author trying to say through these lines? He means to say that though his grandmother was not externally beautiful, she was not young and pretty, she was the owner of a very pure, a divine and a beautiful heart, right? Which is more important. Secondly, number two, yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. Whenever we visit to a winter landscape in the mountains, our heart is thrilled with the peace and the serenity and the comfort, the silence that breathes in the mountain. Such an equal measure of comfort could also be found with the grandmother. Such a quiet soul she was. So that is why, yes, she was beautiful, though she was not pretty externally. It is her inner quality that has been compared here. If you can mark it, see, the author is writing, or rather the author is comparing her with the winter landscape in the mountains. An expanse of pure white. What is this expanse of pure white? The snow-covered mountain range. Like this. The mountains covered with snow, full of serenity. Serenity means silence, contentment, peace. There is no disturbance. As quiet as anything. So his grandmother was also as quiet as the landscape, the winter landscape. Now coming to the review of paragraph 3 and paragraph 4, here the author gives us an idea of how his childhood was spent in the village in the company of his grandmother. And we have seen how his grandmother had taken care of him just like her own child, right? He remembers how they were constantly together most of the time, behaving more like friends than like grandson, grandmother. The grandmother was very old, no doubt, but then without hesitation, she had taken each and every responsibility of the author single-handedly. So it's a very bold step for an old woman to take up the responsibility of a young child. Now what is important here is that other than raising him up in the morning, taking him to school, bringing him back from school, what is more important is that she also tried to inculcate good values in her grandson. This is more important. Bring him up like a proper human being. Right? So we cannot deny the role played by the grandmother in developing the personality of Khushwant Singh as a human being. However, there comes a twist and turn in a man's life. Similarly, in the life and relationship of Khushwant Singh and his grandmother, there came a turning point. Now, why and how this turning point came in that changed the entire relationship, that we will get to know in our next class, right? We will have to wait till then, right? So, thank you for today.